You ever sit at a table that you spent 2 hours setting up, waiting for someone who promised they'd come, and realize halfway through the third cold beer that they were never planning to show up in the first place? I was sitting there that night, the little candles flickering on the kitchen counter I built myself, a roast chicken getting cold under a foil tent, my phone on the table in front of me lighting up with every notification except the one I needed. It was our anniversary, and she didn't even bother to come home. I guess I should tell you how it started, so you can understand how a man can end up here, with a cold dinner and a warm rage he didn't know he was capable of. I'm a tile setter, 38, been doing the same work since I was 19. I like simple things, the feel of grout drying between my fingers, the clean look of a straight line of tiles, the way my body aches in a good way after a day on my knees smoothing out concrete. I'm not fancy, never pretended to be, but I took pride in knowing I could build things that lasted, at least in houses, maybe not in people. I met her at a hardware store. She was picking out paint. I was there for a box of screws. She asked me if I thought willow mist was too bland for a bedroom. I remember how she smiled when I told her it would look good if she wanted something soft. She said she liked that word soft. Back then, she was warm, funny, her hair always pulled back in a loose bun, her eyes bright when she looked at me. She told me once she liked how sure I was, how I never second-guessed a decision. And for a while, we were good, better than good. We'd spend weekends driving out to the discount tile yards so I could show her patterns I liked. She'd pack sandwiches in wax paper, peanut butter for me, turkey for her. Simple, honest, felt like something that would last. But you know how it goes. Time starts to dull things. You think you're building something steady, but maybe she was getting restless while I was feeling satisfied. I started noticing little things. She stopped sitting with me while I watched the evening news. She'd go in the bedroom, close the door, said she was tired. When I'd bring home leftover boxes of tile I thought she'd like for the kitchen, she'd barely look at them, just say, "That's nice," in that voice that didn't mean it. I told myself it was the stress, her job, the bills, life. The first real crack in the wall was the night I came home early. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, her face lit by the screen, and when I walked in, she didn't even look up. Didn't say hi, didn't ask how my day was. I stood there, hands still dirty from work, and she finally sighed and said, "Could you wash up before you touch anything?" It was such a small thing, but it landed like a brick in my chest. I asked, "You all right?" She didn't look at me, just kept typing and mumbled, "I'm fine." After that, I tried harder. I started getting home early when I could, thinking maybe she was lonely. I'd pick up dinner on the way, clean the counters, change the light bulbs she said were too dim. Nothing seemed to matter. She'd come home later and later, never with an explanation. If I asked, she'd roll her eyes and say, "I'm not your property." I didn't know how to argue with that. So I stopped trying. But I never stopped hoping. I thought maybe if I did something special, she'd remember why we were good once. That's why I planned that anniversary dinner. I spent the whole damn day off work, cooked her favorite roast chicken with rosemary and garlic, even made those little potatoes she liked with too much butter. I bought a bottle of cheap red wine and set out 2 glasses. Lit candles. Put on the old country playlist we used to dance to in the kitchen. I sat there at the table, wearing the only nice shirt I owned, a blue button-up she bought me years ago, the one she said made me look like less of a work mule. I checked my phone every 10 minutes. I watched the wax drip down the sides of the candles. I listened to the clock ticking. 9 o'clock came, then 10. The food went cold. The wine stayed corked. And I sat there, trying to swallow this lump in my throat that felt bigger than any disappointment I'd ever known. When she finally came in, 11:30 by the glowing numbers on the stove, she didn't look surprised, didn't even look sorry. She set her bag down and looked at me like I was a stranger squatting in her house. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She glanced at the table, at the cold dinner, the candles burned down to stubs. And she said, "Oh, I forgot it was tonight." I felt my hands go numb. I looked at her and tried to see the woman I met in the paint aisle, the one who smiled at me like I was the only man in the store. But all I saw was someone who couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. I asked her, my voice sounded like it came from someone else, "You forgot?" She didn't answer, just walked past me into the bathroom and shut the door. I sat there another hour, listening to the pipes groan as she ran the shower, staring at the empty chair across from me. My chest felt hollow and heavy all at once, like everything I'd built was gone. And in that moment, I knew. She'd left me long before she ever walked through that door. But I swear to you, sitting there in that cold kitchen, I never felt more awake in my life. After that night, something shifted, not just in her, but in me too. I woke up the next morning on the couch because I couldn't stand the thought of crawling into bed next to her. The kitchen still smelled like cold chicken and melted wax. I threw everything in the trash, one plate at a time, just to hear it clatter and break. It was the only thing that sounded honest in that whole damn house. I went to work that day and didn't tell a soul what happened, but I could feel it sitting on me like a wet coat. Heavy, impossible to ignore. You ever have something like that? Like you're carrying a weight nobody else can see? I kept thinking maybe she'd say something. That night, the next day, the day after that. But she never brought it up. It was like our anniversary, and everything it meant had just evaporated. 2 weeks went by. She kept coming home late, sometimes after midnight. When I asked, she'd sigh and say, "I'm tired, okay?" That was it. No explanation, no apology. One evening, I tried to talk. I really tried. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling her phone. I said, "I don't know what's happening to us, but I can't keep pretending everything's fine." She didn't look up, just kept tapping the screen. So I sat down beside her. I asked, "Do you still love me?" She put the phone down slow, like she needed time to pick her words. Then she looked at me, eyes flat, and said, "I don't know what you want me to say." That's when I felt the first real crack in me. Not in us, just in me. Like something inside finally stopped fighting. After that, I started doing what I always did when something broke. I tried to fix it. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I fixed the squeaky hinges on the cabinet she complained about. I even painted the bedroom in that willow mist color she used to like. And she walked in, looked around, and said, "You think paint's going to change anything?" Then she went to shower and left me standing there with the rollers still dripping in my hand. I'll never forget that smell. Fresh paint. So clean, so full of promise, and so useless. I started staying late at jobs. It was easier to be anywhere but home. My buddy Rick noticed. He's been laying tile with me for years. He asked, "Everything okay with you too?" I opened my mouth to lie, but all I managed was, "I don't know anymore." He didn't push, just patted my shoulder and said, "If you need a place, my couch is always open." I nodded, but in my head, I thought, no, I'm not leaving, not yet. I tell myself she was going through something, a phase. I'd think back to the early days, the way she'd run her hand through my hair and tell me I worked too hard. I started to believe maybe I'd done this. Maybe I'd made her feel trapped. Like she was right. I was a man with no ambition beyond four walls and a decent meal. One night, I was sitting on the porch, smoking something I hadn't done in years, and she came out, wrapped in that old robe she used to wear when she waited up for me. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with this tired disgust. I asked, "Do you hate me now?" She stared at me, then looked away. And she said, "I don't feel anything at all." Then she turned and went back inside. You ever hear something like that? It's worse than yelling, worse than hate. At least hate is something. But nothing? Nothing is like a hole that keeps growing. After that, I stopped trying to fill it. I started sleeping on the couch every night. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that it was better to give her space. But after a while, it didn't feel like my house anymore. It was just a place where I left my boots and drank my coffee. A month later, I came home from a long day, 8 hours straight of tiling a bathroom, and found her packing a small suitcase. My chest went tight. I asked, "You leaving?" She didn't even look up, just zipped the bag and said, "I'm going to stay with my sister a while." I stood there, covered in grout dust, my knees aching, my heart trying to climb out of my ribs. And all I could think was, maybe this is for the best. But she only stayed 2 nights. Then she came back like nothing had happened. She put the bag away, ordered takeout, and sat down to eat like we were still normal. I watched her dipping fries in ketchup, licking salt off her fingers, and felt something in me harden. That's when I knew she wasn't going anywhere, not because she cared, but because it was easier to stay. From then on, we barely spoke. If we did, it was short, tight, like we were strangers forced to share a roof. I stopped cleaning, stopped cooking, stopped trying. If she wanted distance, I'd give her a whole damn ocean. One night, I was working late in the garage sharpening my trowels, anything to stay out of the house, and Rick called me. He said, "Man, I don't want to stir anything up, but I saw her last week. She was at that bar on Ninth. She looked real friendly with some guy." My hand tightened around the handle of the trowel so hard I thought it would snap. I didn't say anything, just hung up. I sat there, staring at the cement floor, feeling my chest burn. But I didn't go inside. Didn't ask her anything. I just waited, like an idiot. Later that night, she came in the garage, hair still damp from her shower. She leaned in the doorway, arms folded. "You going to come in, or are you going to sulk out here all night?" I looked at her and thought, no. You don't get to pretend anymore. But all I said was, "I'm fine here." And she rolled her eyes and walked away. That's how it went. Week after week. Silence, avoidance, the steady drip of whatever we'd had leaking out between us. And me, too stubborn or too scared to admit it was already over. I don't know exactly when it happened, but at some point, I stopped caring if she came home or not. I'd still look up when I heard her keys in the lock, but there was no hope in it anymore, just habit. You ever get to that place where you feel more alone sitting next to someone than you ever did by yourself? That's where I was. Most nights I'd eat dinner standing at the counter, just a sandwich, maybe a cheap can of soup, and then go out to the garage and stay there until I was too tired to think. At least in the garage, nothing expected me to pretend. One Saturday morning, she came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. She was wearing her old college sweatshirt, the one that used to make her look young and happy. Now it just looked like another thing she'd stopped caring about. She pulled a mug from the cabinet and said, real casual, "I'm going out later." I didn't ask where, didn't ask with who. I just poured my coffee and said, "All right." And she gave me this look, like she was disappointed I didn't pick a fight. Like she wanted me to care enough to yell. But I didn't have any yelling left in me. I watched her walk out the door. And the only thing I felt was relief. I cleaned the counters, drank my coffee in peace, and thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is as good as it gets. A few days later, I was out on a job, laying tile in a new build, and my phone buzzed. It was Marissa, her old friend, the one who always smiled a little too kindly at me. We hadn't talked in months, maybe longer. The text just said, "Can we talk?" It's about her. My first instinct was to ignore it. I didn't want any more gossip. But something in me was tired of not knowing. So I called her on my lunch break. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was soft, almost like she was afraid of what she was about to say. "Look, I'm sorry if this isn't my place, but I think you deserve to know. She's been telling people you're controlling, that you never let her have any freedom." I stared at the dashboard of my truck, feeling my jaw clench. "Controlling?" I asked, my voice too calm even for me. "Yeah. She's been saying you make her feel trapped, that you wouldn't let her live her life." I let out a short laugh, no humor in it, just disbelief. "You believe that?" Marissa sighed. "No. That's why I'm calling you. You've always been good to her. Everyone knows that." I swallowed hard, the lump back in my throat. "Thanks," I managed. "There's more," she added. She's been talking to someone else. For a while now." I closed my eyes. Figured as much. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve this." I didn't answer. I just ended the call and sat there, my sandwich untouched, my hands shaking. It's funny how you can know something in your bones but still hope you're wrong. How you can watch everything fall apart and still think maybe you could glue it back together if you just tried hard enough. But that call, that was the last nail in the coffin. That night, I didn't wait up. I didn't cook. I didn't even look at the clock. I just sat in the garage with the lights off, listening to the old radio crackle and thinking about all the ways I'd failed and all the ways I hadn't. You ever wonder how long you can beat yourself up for something that wasn't even your fault? I'd been blaming myself for months, thinking if I was more interesting, more ambitious, more anything, maybe she'd have stayed. But sitting there in the dark, I realized she'd been gone long before she ever packed that little suitcase. Maybe before I ever lit those anniversary candles. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I made coffee, the way I always did, and looked around the kitchen. The place felt hollow, like a stage after the actors have left. I saw her purse on the counter, her keys in the dish by the door, her jacket slung over the chair, and none of it meant anything anymore. I didn't feel angry, not exactly. I just felt done. When she finally came downstairs, I was sitting at the table with my coffee. She looked surprised to see me up so early. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice flat. I shrugged. "Just thinking." She poured herself coffee, careful not to look at me. "You going to work today?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. Like always. And then, because I couldn't help it, I added, "You going out later?" She glanced at me, her face tightening. "Don't start." I shook my head. "I'm not starting anything. Just curious." She didn't answer. She walked away, her mug in her hands, and I realized that was the last time I'd ask her anything that mattered. After that, I stopped talking to her unless I had to. Stopped asking where she was going or when she'd be back. Stopped caring if she looked at me with that tired contempt. If she wanted distance, I'd give her all the space she could stand. A few days later, Marissa texted again. She asked if I was okay. I didn't answer. I didn't know how. At work, Rick could tell something was different. "You look like you're somewhere else," he said, pressing a tile into mortar. "Maybe I am," I told him. He didn't ask more. Men like us don't need to talk everything to death. That weekend, I cleaned out the garage. I boxed up tools I hadn't used in years, threw out old paint cans, swept the floor until my arms ached. When I was done, I sat on the step, looking around at the empty shelves, and thought, maybe it was time to clear out everything. Not just the junk, but all of it. I went inside and found her in the living room, watching some reality show with the volume too loud. I stood there, waiting for her to look up. She didn't. So I said, "We need to talk." She muted the TV, slow, like it was a chore. "What now?" she sighed. "I'm done," I told her. "With what?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "All of it." And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But she didn't look scared or sad. She looked relieved. And somehow, that was worse than if she'd cried. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the kitchen with the light off, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the floorboards as she moved around upstairs. Every sound felt like a reminder that this was her house as much as mine. But it didn't feel like home anymore. Not for a long time. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to make her happy. All the weekends I worked extra jobs to afford the things she said she wanted. The vacations we never took because she changed her mind. The plans we made that she never cared enough to see through. I thought about that anniversary dinner, how stupid I felt sitting there in my good shirt, watching the candles burn down. And I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep pretending that if I just tried harder, she'd come back to me. The next morning, I packed my clothes in a couple of old boxes. I left most of my things, tools, work boots, jackets, out in the garage. I didn't want to take more than I needed. Didn't want her saying I'd stolen anything. Didn't want any reason to have to come back. She came downstairs halfway through. She stopped in the doorway, hair a mess, rubbing sleep out of her eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice thick. I kept folding my shirts, stacking them neat so I could carry them easy. "I'm leaving," I said. "Where are you going?" "Does it matter?" She looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. "Is this because of what Marissa said?" "No," I told her, and it was the truth. "It's because you stopped caring." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You don't have to do this," she said, softer. I finally looked at her, really looked, and I didn't see the woman I fell in love with anymore. Just someone who wanted the convenience of me without the work of loving me. I picked up the boxes. "Yeah," I said. "I do." I carried everything out to my truck. It was still early enough the neighborhood was quiet. No one to watch me load my life up in cardboard. I shut the tailgate and stood there a minute, breathing in the cool morning air. It smelled like wet grass and the faint exhaust from my truck's engine. Better than that house ever smelled. When I went back inside for the last load, she was sitting at the kitchen table, her coffee cup in both hands, staring down into it like it might have the answers she never looked for in me. She didn't say anything when I walked by. Didn't look up when I set my keys on the counter. I thought maybe she'd try to stop me. Maybe she'd ask me to stay. But she just sat there, quiet. And that told me everything. I pulled my wedding ring off and set it next to her cup. It made a soft sound, metal on ceramic. I waited a second, just in case she'd look at me. She didn't. So I walked out. I didn't slam the door. Didn't need to. Some endings don't need a big show. They're just over. I drove to Rick's place. He didn't say much when he opened the door and saw me standing there with my boxes. Just stepped aside so I could come in. "You good?" he asked, when I set everything down in the spare room. "No," I said, "but I will be." He nodded. "That's something." I spent the next few days in that little room, getting up early to go to work, coming back late, sitting on the porch with a beer until I was tired enough to sleep. Rick didn't push me to talk. He just sat there sometimes, drinking his own beer, and we'd listen to the crickets. It was the most peace I'd had in months. She texted me a couple times. Short messages. "Are you okay? Do you want to talk?" I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. One evening, Marissa called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. She sounded nervous. "Hey," she said. "I heard you moved out." "Yeah, I'm sorry," she said, and I could tell she meant it. "Don't be," I told her. It was overdue. There was a pause. "I know this isn't the right time, but if you ever need anything, I'm here." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just thanked her. We hung up, and I sat there a long time, thinking about how you can spend years giving everything to someone who wouldn't cross the street for you. The next morning, I drove back to the house while she was at work. I didn't go inside. Just parked out front, looked at it one last time. The lawn I used to mow, the gutters I cleaned every fall, the windows I'd replaced when she said they were drafty. I'd built that place up for her, made it better than I found it. But no amount of fixing could make her want to stay. Before I left, I took a picture of the front door. Not because I wanted to remember it fondly, but because I needed to remind myself what it looked like when you gave everything and still lost. I deleted her number on the drive back to Rick's. It felt final in a way packing boxes never did. I thought I'd feel sad, maybe regret, but mostly, I just felt empty. And that was better than hurting. The first few days after I left were almost peaceful. I'd wake up early at Rick's place, pour coffee into a chipped mug, and sit on the porch watching the street wake up. Work felt simpler too. No need to check my phone every break to see if she'd bothered to text. Most times, she didn't. And that was fine. But on the fourth morning, my phone finally buzzed. First, just a short message. So you think you're the victim here? I ignored it. An hour later, another. Running away doesn't make you any less pathetic. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and turned up the radio. Didn't help much. By lunchtime, there were 3 more messages. You think leaving makes you a man? I always knew you didn't have the guts to stay and work through it. Everyone's going to know how weak you are. That last one hit different. Because she was right. Everyone would know. Small town, people talk. And part of me almost felt ashamed. Almost. I didn't reply. I worked through the day, laying tiles in a half-finished kitchen, feeling my jaw clench tighter every hour. By the time I packed up my tools, my phone had another message waiting. You can't even face me. What a coward. I sat there in my truck, breathing hard, the steering wheel creaking under my grip. And I thought, maybe this is what she wanted all along. Me gone, her free to spit on whatever was left of my pride. But you know what? I'd rather be called a coward by someone like her than spend one more day pretending I deserved it. That evening, she called. I let it ring out. She called again. And again. On the 4th call, I finally picked up. Her voice was icy calm. So what's the plan, huh? You going to hide out at Rick's forever? I didn't answer. You think you can just walk out and leave everything for me to clean up? You think that makes you noble? I closed my eyes. I think it makes me sane, I said quietly. She laughed short and mean. You're nothing without this house. Without me. Everyone knows you'd still be a nobody laying tile for cash if it wasn't for me pushing you to be better. I didn't feel shame anymore. Didn't feel much of anything except tired. You done? I asked. I'm just getting started, she snapped. I'm going to tell everyone how you abandoned me. How you were never man enough to fight for what mattered. How you... I hung up, tossed the phone onto the seat beside me, stared out at the street lamps flickering on, and something in me settled. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. This was never going to stop. She'd keep taking little pieces of me as long as I let her. I wasn't going to let her anymore. Next morning, before dawn, I drove back to the house. Didn't bother texting her. Didn't want another word. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The place smelled stale, like old coffee and damp towels. I walked through each room, noting how little of it felt like mine anymore. That was fine. It wouldn't be mine for much longer. I went to the bedroom first, pulled open the closet, started yanking her clothes off hangers. Neat little dresses she never wore for me anymore. Jackets she'd buy on impulse and forget in the back. I didn't fold anything, just piled it into boxes. Her perfume bottles, her makeup, the half-finished craft projects, everything went. I could almost hear her voice in my head, sneering. You think this makes you strong? I didn't care. I moved to the bathroom. Her shampoos, lotions, hairdryer, all in the box. Kitchen next. Her mugs, her favorite tea canister. The cheap wine glasses she'd bought when she decided we needed to be more sophisticated. Gone. By the time I was done, the sun was up. I loaded the boxes into the back of my truck. It started to drizzle, cool rain pattering on the tailgate. Fitting, I thought. I drove to her mother's place, a squat little brick house a few blocks away. Nobody was home. Didn't matter. I set every box and bag on the front steps, one by one. Stepped back, took out my phone, and snapped a picture. Then I sent it to her with a short message. You're free now. I didn't wait for her reply. Didn't need it. On the drive back, I called Rick. You good? He asked when he picked up. Yeah, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. I'm going to the courthouse tomorrow. Filing for divorce. Rick was quiet a moment. Then he said, about damn time. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No dreams. No regret. Next day, I did exactly what I said I would. Walked into the courthouse, filled out the papers, signed my name. The clerk asked, You sure you want to do this? I looked her dead in the eye. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. When I left, I stood on the steps a moment, feeling the drizzle start again. It felt clean somehow, like the last bit of her washing off me. I didn't feel victorious. Didn't feel broken either. Just done. Later, Marissa texted. I heard you filed. Are you okay? I thought about it. About the cold kitchen that night she forgot our anniversary. About all the nights after. About the way her voice sounded when she told me she didn't feel anything anymore. Yeah, I replied. I'm okay. And for once, it wasn't a lie.